What would you do if you discovered your billionaire husband was with his mistress on Christmas Eve while you're 7 months pregnant? After he told you he was visiting his dying mother in the ICU? Have you ever known someone was lying but stayed silent anyway? Have you felt your heart break while keeping a smile on your face? But here's the twist. The mother had been dead for 2 years. Comment below. Would you expose him or stay silent? Natalie Bradford's hands trembled as she pressed the earpiece deeper, Trevor's voice flooding her senses from 400 miles away. The Pacific Palisades mansion felt colder than the December night outside, ocean waves crashing against cliffs below like they were trying to reach her. My wife thinks I'm at St. Joseph's Hospital in Phoenix. Trevor's laugh cut through the audio feed. Champagne drunk and careless. She's so gullible, so trusting, just like always. Natalie sat frozen on their king-sized bed, silk sheets cool against her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, 7 years married, 2,155 days of this. Through the earpiece, she heard Vanessa's giggle. Then Trevor's voice dropped lower, intimate. Once the baby's born, I'm divorcing her anyway. Her inheritance will set us up perfectly. I've been moving money to offshore accounts for months. She'll get nothing. The words landed like fists. Natalie's vision blurred, but her mind sharpened to crystal clarity. Downstairs, Christmas lights blinked on the trees she'd decorated alone. Upstairs, her phone glowed blue against tear-stained cheeks as she listened to her husband describe another woman's body in Suite 4012 of the Montage Hotel in Beverly Hills. The same words he'd once whispered to her, the same promises, all performance, all lies. Has betrayal ever hit you on a day that was supposed to be sacred? Tell me in the comments. She had one night to move $50 million, pack 7 years of evidence, and disappear before he came home. But first, she needed to make a call to Shenzhen. 7 years earlier, she walked down the aisle believing in forever. By the honeymoon, she already knew the truth. The Austin sunset painted her father's ranch in gold and amber. Natalie wore her grandmother's lace dress, simple and beautiful, while Trevor stood waiting in a suit that cost more than her nursing school tuition. She was 26, a pediatric nurse who volunteered at free clinics. He was 32, a rising tech entrepreneur with dreams bigger than Texas oil fields. I do, she said, meaning it with everything she had. Trevor's phone buzzed during the vows. He glanced at it. Sorry, he mouthed, turning it off. But the damage was done. That split second of divided attention, the first crack in her fairy tale. Their wedding night should have been magic. Instead, Natalie lay beneath hotel sheets, watching Trevor check his phone mid-kiss, his fingers trailing across her body while his eyes tracked notifications. She felt it then, the emptiness. Like she was there but not really seen. Is everything okay? She whispered. Perfect, he said, kissing her neck without conviction. You're perfect. But she wasn't. Not enough to hold his full attention, not even on the night that was supposed to be just theirs. When did you first ignore a red flag in a relationship? What made you stay? On their 3rd anniversary, she found the first hotel receipt. She said nothing. That silence would cost her everything. He became a billionaire while she became invisible, and that was exactly how he wanted it. Years 1 through 5 blurred together like freeway lights at midnight. Trevor's software company exploded, contracts with governments, tech giants, Fortune 500 companies. His face appeared in Forbes, TechCrunch, Wall Street Journal. Natalie appeared nowhere. She gave up nursing when they moved to the Pacific Palisades mansion. We don't need the money, Trevor said, kissing her forehead like she was a child. Focus on starting our family. 3 miscarriages later, she wandered 12,000 square feet of emptiness while he traveled to Seattle, Manhattan, Miami, Vegas. Each trip stretched longer. Each excuse grew thinner. Their physical life together became scheduled, mechanical. Trevor would return from business trips and come to her in darkness, his touch efficient and purposeless. She was a vessel for his air, nothing more. Her body held space for his future while her heart hollowed out. Meanwhile, social media showed the real Trevor. Champagne toasts at galas, beautiful women in designer gowns pressed against his side. Business associates, he'd explain when she asked. Potential investors. You're being paranoid. She started noticing details. Lipstick shades that didn't match hers. Perfume scents that lingered on his shirts. Credit card charges from hotels in cities where he claimed to stay with colleagues. Have you ever lost yourself trying to save someone else? Drop A if you've been there. When his mother actually died 2 years ago, Natalie stood beside him at the funeral. She never imagined he'd use that death as an alibi for adultery. She didn't know her family's oil fortune made her a target, until she heard him planning to take it all. Natalie came from Texas oil money, the kind that ran generations deep. Her grandfather struck black gold in the 1960s. Her father expanded the business across 3 states. When she turned 25, she inherited $50 million in a trust fund kept separate from her marriage, her father's insurance policy. Smart man, Trevor had said when they signed the prenup, never showing his real thoughts. But 6 years into their marriage, Natalie overheard a phone call. Trevor in his home office, door cracked open, speaking to someone about asset protection strategies and accessing spousal inheritance accounts through custody leverage. She stood frozen in the hallway, pregnant belly pressed against the wall. That night, she remembered their early dating. How Trevor had asked careful questions about her family, her background, her trust fund. How his desire had intensified the night she'd mentioned the inheritance amount. She'd thought he was impressed by her family's success. He'd been calculating his return on investment. Back then, he'd kissed her with such passion. His hands memorized her body like she was treasure. In bed, he'd whispered promises about forever, about building something real together. She'd believed every word because his performance was flawless. Now she understood. Every touch had a price tag. Every kiss was transaction. If you discovered someone married you for money, would you walk away or take everything first? The pregnancy wasn't an accident. It was his final move. Once the baby arrived, he could divorce her and claim full custody with his resources, unless she moved first. For $3 million, she bought the one thing money usually can't provide, the absolute truth. September 15th, 3 months before Christmas Eve. Natalie made the call from a burner phone, standing in the mansion's walk-in closet surrounded by Trevor's designer suits. Chen Tech Industries in Shenzhen specialized in military-grade surveillance equipment, microscopic recording chips undetectable by standard security sweeps. I need proof, she told the technician. Everything, every word. The chips arrived in a package marked medical supplies, each one smaller than a grain of rice, embedded with transmission technology that streamed directly to her encrypted phone. She spent 3 weeks alone in that closet, fingers steady as a surgeon's, sliding devices into collar linings, shoe insoles, tie hems, jacket pockets. These same suits she used to press her face against when he came home, breathing in his cologne, trying to hold on to something real. Now her touches were clinical, purposeful, deadly. She knew his wardrobe better than he did. The Navy Armani he wore to board meetings, The charcoal Tom Ford for investor dinners, the casual Brunello Cucinelli for golf weekends that never included golf. Morning light streamed through windows as she worked, her pregnant belly brushing against fabric as she reached into closet corners. The intimacy of it struck her, knowing every piece of clothing on his body, weaponizing that knowledge against him. Would you gather evidence first or confront immediately? What's smarter, emotion or strategy? For 90 days, she listened to every meeting, every phone call, every whispered conversation in hotel rooms. What she discovered went far beyond affairs. The truth wasn't just one woman. It was 12 cities, 15 women, and a criminal conspiracy that could destroy everything. Natalie sat in the home office, headphones tight against her ears, laptop screen glowing in the December darkness. Rain hammered the windows, city lights blurred below. Inside her, the baby kicked, small feet against ribs, innocent and unaware. She'd been listening for 3 months straight, every recording categorized by date, location, woman's name. Miami, Vegas, Seattle, Manhattan, Chicago. The affairs were bad enough. Hearing Trevor's voice drop to that intimate register for stranger after stranger, using the same lines, the same promises he'd once given her. But what she discovered in the business calls was worse. The SEC won't catch it if we route through the Cayman accounts, Trevor said in one recording, his voice casual, confident. By the time they notice, we'll have liquidated and moved everything offshore. Another call. Frame Patterson for the insider trading. He's too stupid to realize what we're doing until it's too late. Natalie transcribed every word, fingers steady on the keyboard. Her baby moved inside her as she documented her husband's crimes, securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. Trevor wasn't just unfaithful. He was a criminal building an empire on stolen money and destroyed lives. The recordings from hotel rooms cut deepest. Not just the sounds, though those were bad enough, but the words. "You're so beautiful," he'd tell them. "I've never felt this way before." The same exact phrases. Copy and paste intimacy. Words he'd never said to her, not even in the beginning. Could you listen to recordings of your partner's affairs to gather evidence? Or would you break first? Then she heard her own name, and Trevor discussing permanent solutions with someone called the Fixer. She had 48 hours, maybe less. Using his dead mother as an alibi for adultery wasn't just cruel. It was the mistake that sealed his fate. Christmas Eve morning arrived cold and bright. Trevor came downstairs wearing his grief face, the one Natalie had seen at actual funerals, at hospital bedsides, at moments that required human emotion he didn't actually feel. "I have to fly to Phoenix," he said, voice breaking perfectly. "Mom's in the ICU, stage 4 cancer. The doctors say it might be her last Christmas." Natalie stood at the kitchen counter, coffee growing cold in her hands. Sunlight streamed through windows, highlighting the lie between them. His mother had been dead for 2 years. Natalie had stood beside Trevor at the funeral in Scottsdale, held his hand during the burial, listened to him deliver a eulogy that made everyone cry. She'd watched him grieve, or perform grief so well even she believed it. Now he was using that death as cover for adultery. "I'm so sorry," Natalie whispered, playing her part one last time. Trevor crossed the kitchen and kissed her forehead. Gentle, tender, empty. His hand settled briefly on her pregnant belly, fingers spreading across fabric like he cared about the life inside. The baby shifted under his touch, responding to familiar pressure. Natalie's body betrayed her with involuntary warmth at his nearness. 7 years of muscle memory. 7 years of wanting to believe this man loved her. Even now, knowing everything, her skin remembered his scent, sandalwood and lies. "Take care of yourself," he said, grabbing his suitcase by the door, packed for hotels, not hospitals. "I'll call when I land." She watched from the upstairs window as his car pulled away, heading north toward Beverly Hills instead of south toward LAX. Coast Highway disappearing into morning fog. What lie would be your final straw? Where's the line that, once crossed, there's no return? As his car disappeared down the Coast Highway, she opened her laptop and initiated Phase 1, financial extraction. By nightfall, he'd have nothing. While he was in Suite 4012 with Vanessa, she was liquidating their entire life in 18 clicks. Natalie moved through the mansion like a ghost, executing her own haunting. First call, Monarch Insurance Group. The property policy Trevor thought was untouchable. $50 million in coverage on their Pacific Palisades estate. "I need to cash out immediately," she told the agent. "Yes, I understand the penalties. Process it now." 18 clicks. Transfer complete. The money vanished from their joint accounts into her father's Texas bank, beyond Trevor's reach. Second call, her father's attorney in Houston. "Send the divorce papers. Everything we discussed. I need them tonight." Third call, her own lawyer. "File restraining orders. Freeze his access to my trust fund. I'm ready." She worked from the bathroom, the only room in the house without security cameras Trevor had installed for safety. Her phone buzzed with confirmation after confirmation. Bank balances dropping, legal documents processing. 7 years of financial entanglement severed in under an hour. Then she walked to their bedroom, the marital bed where they'd conceived this child 5 months ago. Sheets still held his cologne's faint trace. The scent that used to comfort her now turned her stomach. Natalie slipped off her wedding rings, white gold and diamonds catching afternoon light. She placed them on his pillow next to the divorce papers, the printed transcripts of every affair, every lie, every betrayal. In the bathroom mirror, she barely recognized herself. 7 months pregnant. Hair she hadn't styled in weeks, eyes that had cried too many tears, a stranger wearing her face. But underneath, something harder. Something Trevor had missed completely because he never bothered to really look. Have you ever had to choose between what's legal and what's right? Between safety and revenge? She placed the divorce papers on his pillow, the recordings on her phone, and evidence in her car. One more stop before freedom. His sister needed to know the truth about her perfect brother. She didn't know she was being followed. But Trevor knew exactly where she was going. Night fell fast on Christmas Eve. Natalie loaded her Mercedes with evidence, USB drives, printed transcripts, financial records. The baby shifted inside her as she bent to arrange boxes in the trunk. Small movements reminding her what she was fighting for. She didn't notice the black SUV that appeared 3 blocks behind her as she pulled onto the Coast Highway. Didn't see it maintain exact distance as she merged onto I-8 heading east toward Arizona. Her mind was on Trevor's sister Patricia, rehearsing what she'd say, how she'd show the evidence. 400 miles north in Beverly Hills, Trevor's phone buzzed with a bank alert. His face went white, reading the message. Account balances, 0.0. Property insurance, liquidated. Status, divorced. Papers filed. What the hell? He lunged for his phone, hands shaking with rage Vanessa had never seen before. One call, speed dial. V. Santos, we have a problem. She knows. She took everything. She's heading to my sister's. His voice dropped to something cold and flat. Handle it. Now. I don't care how. In her Mercedes, Natalie adjusted her rearview mirror. Rain had started, making the highway slick and dark. Behind her, headlights kept perfect distance. She turned up the heat, rubbing her belly where the baby kicked. 3 months ago was the last time Trevor touched her. Really touched her. Not the mechanical coupling of recent months, but something he made feel almost real. His hands moving across her body with practiced skill. Whispered words that sounded like devotion. Now she understood. Every touch was performance. Every kiss was manipulation. Her pregnancy wasn't a miracle. It was his insurance policy for custody, for access to her money, for control. The violence had always been there, lurking beneath his gentle facade. She just hadn't recognized it until now. When have you been in danger without realizing it? What saved you, luck or instinct? Interstate 8 stretched empty ahead. The semi-truck's headlights appeared suddenly in her lane. She had 3 seconds to realize this wasn't an accident. The crash killed her instantly, but her revenge was just beginning. The trucker who witnessed it said later he'd never seen anything like it. The semi swerved into her lane without warning, no brake lights, no hesitation. Natalie's Mercedes tried to avoid impact. Skid marks showed she fought for control, but physics won. Metal crushed metal. Glass exploded. The Mercedes crumpled like paper against the semi's front grille. Emergency lights painted the highway red and blue. 11:47 p.m. Christmas Eve. Interstate 8, just outside El Centro, California. In her final moment, Natalie's hand moved to her pregnant belly. Protective instinct older than thought. The baby she'd never meet. The daughter she'd never hold. 7 months of kicks and movements, and hope for something better. Her last thought wasn't about Trevor. It was about whether her plan would work without her there to execute it. Whether her death would trigger the final sequence she'd programmed 3 weeks ago, sitting in that closet, knowing this might happen. Death severed everything. Breath, heartbeat, the physical connection between mother and unborn child. But it activated something else. Something Trevor never saw coming. The police report called it a tragic accident. The coroner listed cause of death: blunt force trauma. No investigation into the black SUV that disappeared before first responders arrived. No questions about the semi-truck driver who had no memory of what happened. Clean, efficient, untraceable. 5 days later, Trevor stood at Natalie's funeral in Austin, Texas. Her father's ranch transformed into mourning. Black clothes, whispered condolences, caskets, plural. Mother and unborn child buried together. Trevor cried. Real tears that fooled everyone. He held Natalie's mother as she collapsed, supported her father through the eulogy, accepted sympathy from 300 guests who believed he'd lost everything. His performance was flawless. The devastated husband, the grieving, almost father, the man whose world had shattered on Christmas Eve. Only Natalie's father noticed something off. The way Trevor checked his phone during the burial, the flash of rage that crossed his face when he thought no one was looking. Could you forgive someone who cried at your funeral after causing your death? 3 days after burial, a package arrived at her father's ranch. Return address: Natalie Bradford. Sent date: December 24th, with delayed delivery instructions. She planned for her own murder and programmed justice from beyond the grave. The package sat on Robert Bradford's kitchen table like a ghost, his daughter's handwriting on the label. Return address: Natalie Bradford. Sent date: December 24th, the night she died. Inside, a USB drive, a letter sealed with wax, and instructions typed in her precise nurse's script. Dad, the letter began, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. And if I'm dead, it wasn't an accident. Robert's hands shook as he plugged the USB into his laptop. The kitchen where Natalie had baked cookies as a child. Where she'd told him about Trevor. Where she'd announced her pregnancy. Now filled with her voice from beyond death. Audio files loaded, hundreds of them. Organized by date, location, woman's name. But worse, financial records showing Trevor had hired a private investigator to track her. Text messages with someone called V. Santos discussing solving the Natalie problem permanently. Security footage of a black SUV registered to Trevor's shell company following her Mercedes the night she died. The recordings from hotel rooms hurt most. Not just Trevor's affairs, Robert could handle his son-in-law's betrayal. But hearing Natalie's written descriptions of their intimate life, the lies Trevor performed in their bedroom, the way he'd weaponized her pregnancy, turned her body into a transaction. Evidence photos showed other women in hotel rooms. Same positions, same locations, same practiced moves Trevor once used on his daughter. Robert's grief transformed to rage as he read deeper. Natalie had known for months, documented everything, prepared for the possibility Trevor would kill her rather than let her leave with evidence of his crimes. Would you trust someone enough to execute your revenge after death? Who would you choose? But the USB held one more secret, a 48-hour dead man switch. If Natalie didn't check in, everything uploaded automatically to FBI, SEC, IRS, and media. The clock had already started. Vanessa Santos wasn't just his mistress. She was federal law enforcement, and he'd confessed everything to her in bed. FBI Special Agent Vanessa Santos sat in the Los Angeles field office staring at two screens. Left side, Natalie's recordings from the microchips. Right side, FBI surveillance footage from the same time periods. 18 months of undercover work building a securities fraud case against Trevor Whitmore. Trevor had no idea the woman in Suite 4012 wore a wire. That every whispered confession in bed, every arrogant boast about stolen money, every detail about offshore accounts was being recorded by federal agents 3 floors below. The flashback played in Vanessa's mind, the first time she'd seduced him at a tech conference in Vegas. Her assignment: get close to Trevor, gain his trust, document his crimes. She'd calculated every touch, every kiss, every moment of fake intimacy designed to make him feel powerful and careless. While Trevor believed she was overcome with passion, Vanessa was professionally detached, noting details, memorizing conversations, building the case that would destroy him. His vulnerability in bed, the way he'd confess crimes while thinking pillow talk was private, had become federal evidence. But Natalie's death changed everything. Securities fraud was one thing. Murder was another. She was working parallel to us, Vanessa said, voice tight. She gathered evidence we didn't have. She knew about V. Santos before we did. For the first time in 18 months undercover, Vanessa felt real emotion. Grief for a woman she'd never met, but who'd been fighting the same battle from inside a nightmare marriage. The agent reviewing Natalie's dead man switch looked up. Uploads complete. FBI, SEC, IRS, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. Every major outlet has the files now. It's going viral. Vanessa's phone buzzed. Field office director. Execute the arrest. Now. Could you do Vanessa's job? Seduce someone for justice? Where's the line between duty and deception? Federal agents arrived at Pacific Palisades mansion at dawn. Trevor answered the door in silk pajamas, smiling, still believing he'd gotten away with everything. He built a $2.3 billion empire on lies and watched it collapse in a single morning. Trevor's smile vanished when he saw the badges. Trevor Whitmore, You're under arrest for securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and first-degree murder of Natalie Bradford. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Neighbors emerged onto their Pacific Palisades lawns, watching the billionaire tech mogul get walked to a federal vehicle in his designer pajamas. Camera phones captured everything. By noon, every major news outlet ran the story. Headlines screamed, "Tech billionaire arrested for wife's murder." CEO's secret life, 15 affairs, 2B fraud scheme. Dead woman's evidence brings down Silicon Valley giant. The intimate details went public. Courtroom recordings of Trevor's voice describing affairs, body language experts analyzing his funeral performance. Security footage showing his careful grief was all calculation. His private desires, once whispered in hotel rooms, now dissected on cable news. Bank accounts frozen, assets seized. The Pacific Palisades mansion got a for sale sign before Trevor made bail. His business partners issued statements distancing themselves. Investors fled. Board members resigned. 7 years of building an empire on stolen money and destroyed lives, gone in 18 hours. In his holding cell, Trevor raged about Natalie betraying him. That she'd dared gather evidence. That she'd outsmarted him from beyond the grave. He couldn't comprehend how the woman he'd dismissed as gullible and trusting had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. She was always weak, he told his lawyer. Always emotional, always needy. His lawyer looked at him with something like pity. She destroyed you completely while you thought she was crying alone. That's not weakness. The media storm grew. Podcasts dissected the case. True crime shows produced episodes. Social media turned Natalie into a symbol. The woman who refused to die quietly, who programmed justice from beyond death, who proved patience and planning beat rage and power. Trevor's face appeared everywhere, but not how he'd wanted. Not Forbes covers and tech conferences. Mugshots and perp walks and footage of him being led into court in chains. Is there satisfaction in watching someone's empire fall? Or just sadness that it came to this? But one question remained. Who was driving that semi-truck? And why did $500,000 appear in his account exactly 12 hours before the crash? The truth wasn't that Trevor killed Natalie. It's that he had help, and the helper was someone she trusted. Federal investigators tracked the semi-truck driver to a motel outside Vegas. David Chen, 47, with gambling debts, no prior criminal record. His bank account showed $500,000 deposited 12 hours before Natalie's crash. Withdrawal from a shell company that traced back to Trevor's business empire. But the money trail went somewhere else first, through another account, another name. Rebecca Hayes. Trevor's executive assistant for 6 years, the woman who managed his schedule, booked his hotels, knew every detail of his life, and Natalie's. Security footage showed Rebecca meeting with Chen 3 weeks before Christmas, handing him an envelope, providing details about Natalie's route, timing, vehicle description. The interrogation room video revealed everything. Rebecca's obsession with Trevor disguised as professional loyalty. Her jealousy of Natalie masked as concern for his career. She'd shared Natalie's secrets, her fears about the marriage, her suspicions about affairs, her plans to divorce, never realizing those confessions were being weaponized. He deserved better than her, Rebecca told investigators, voice flat. She was holding him back. Always complaining, always emotional. I understood him. I could give him what he needed. Flashback footage showed Rebecca at company events, standing too close to Trevor, her eyes tracking his every move. At Natalie's funeral, Rebecca had cried, but for Trevor's loss, not Natalie's death. She'd believed removing Natalie would make Trevor see her differently. Instead, she'd committed murder for a man who barely knew her name. Trevor had used Rebecca's obsession the same way he'd used everything else, as a tool, disposable and forgettable. The betrayal cut deeper because Natalie had trusted Rebecca, had invited her to their home, had confided her fears during late-night calls when Trevor was traveling. Every secret Natalie shared became ammunition used against her. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was working against you? How did you survive that? As federal prosecutors built their case, one final piece of Natalie's plan activated. A video message recorded the night before she died. She knew, she'd always known, she died on Interstate 8, but she won in a courtroom 3 states away. The federal courthouse in Austin fell silent as the video loaded. Natalie Bradford appeared on screen, 7 months pregnant, sitting in her home office, recording a message she knew might be her last testimony. "My name is Natalie Bradford," she began, hand resting on her belly. "If you're watching this, I'm dead. Trevor Whitmore killed me. Not directly, he's too smart for that. But he hired it done, and he'll pretend to grieve at my funeral while cashing in on my death." The courtroom watched her speak directly to the daughter she'd never meet. "Baby girl, I wanted you so much. 3 miscarriages before you. 7 months of feeling you move inside me, knowing I might not survive to hold you. Your father..." Her voice caught. "He never wanted a child. He wanted an heir, a tool, a way to control my money." She detailed everything. Trevor's affairs, his financial crimes, his murder plot, Rebecca's involvement. But what struck hardest was her final message about love and betrayal and choosing truth over safety. "I could have stayed quiet," Natalie said. "Could have taken the abuse, ignored the affairs, let him steal everything. But what kind of mother would I be if I taught my daughter that survival means accepting cruelty? That love means letting someone destroy you?" Her hand moved across her belly. "You won't remember me, but I hope someday you'll know I chose truth over fear. That I fought for justice even when it cost me everything." The video ended. The courtroom remained frozen. 3 hours later, the verdict. Trevor Whitmore guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy, fraud, money laundering. 40 years minimum. No possibility of parole. Rebecca Hayes, 25 years as accomplice to murder. David Chen, 15 years for vehicular homicide. Natalie's $50 million inheritance established the Bradford Foundation, providing free medical care, legal aid, and support for women escaping dangerous marriages. Her parents cut the ribbon at the Austin opening, her face on the memorial plaque, her legacy transforming pain into purpose. Trevor's final look as they led him from court showed something new. Recognition that the woman he dismissed as weak had destroyed him completely. That her patience wasn't submission. That her silence wasn't acceptance. That she'd been building his prison while he thought she was crying alone. Would you have fought back like Natalie or walked away quietly? What does justice mean when you're no longer alive to see it? Comment below, and remember, sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. She waited 7 years to leave. He'll wait 40 in prison to get out. Some people confuse patience with weakness. That mistake cost him everything.